That's fresh.
Yeah.
I personally, I don't know. I mean, I'm an ignorant person here.
In Isaiah, right? Sorry, just the.
Yeah.
I assume that might be where.
In Arabic.
But I also don't speak Arabic, so I have no idea.
No, because I was just checking once you said that, Emily. I wanted to check because we could find Hebrew words in here, so I just wanted to check, is it in Arabic or in Hebrew? It's wa'abadahum al-khashab wal-asnam. But yeah, could be tropes of biblical verses there, Emily. That's a good point. But no, the idea that Christians worship idols is very common, actually, in Near Eastern polemic.
Yeah, but usually, for example, in Muslim polemics, it's after Christ passed.
Right.
So Christ was right.
Right.
But then they took the wrong path and started worshiping idols. And
so here it happened early.
This guy's saying
good point.
He made them do it in his life, and then God took him.
Yeah, very good
So
point.
that's fresh to me.
Yeah. Okay, so Jamal's pointing out, I think that's a very important point, that the Islamic Jesus obviously did everything right. By the way, he was a Muslim, and it was the people afterwards that went off in the wrong direction and created Christianity. And here, it's Jesus himself. So very good, pointing out the difference in the Jewish view and the Muslim view. Okay, so let's see what happens. So I'll read, and I'll just read a little bit from the last bit. And Israel suffered great difficulties on his account, and they tried to return him to the correct path, but they could not, because in our sources, every place where it is written, the Hebrew vayehi, and may it be, indicates great difficulties, as it is said, in the time, and this is in Hebrew, vayehi b'yamei, and then it turns back to Arabic of Tiberius Caesar and his minister Herod. And then it starts the story. So for those of you who study rabbinic texts, you can probably feel what's going on here. What's going on here, Yitzhak?
No, it's famous. It's from the Talmud.
Yeah, perfect.
But it's strange that they use it for this text.
So great. So this is the amazing, this is why this introduction is so fascinating. You have these formulaic Arabic sort of textual things going on. And then this rabbinic midrash from the Talmud, exactly, which is usually used to say Vayehi b'mei Achashverosh, talking about the book of Esther, and bringing a lot of other examples there. And here it's being applied to Toledot Yeshu. So I mean, it's very interesting in that Toledot Yeshu is here, by the way, you notice, being brought into the rabbinic canon. I mean, you can say it's weird, but you also see that Toledot Yeshu is sort of being accepted into these rabbinic texts. We have this midrash on the word vayehi, as used in Megillat Esther and various other places, Sefer Shoftim and all sorts of things, and also Toledot Yeshu. Now, it's also very weird because I don't think at this point Toledot Yeshu was circulating in Hebrew. I don't know where this writer came up with the idea, vayehi b'mei tabarinus Caesar. Not familiar with any version of Toledot Yeshu that starts out that way. So it's a little bit weird. What do you want to say, Abraham?
Just to clarify, is it the only manuscript that Vayehi b'mei Tosha is existing? All the other manuscript doesn't have the...
I do not have a single manuscript that begins Toledot Yeshu that way, because it was appended onto one particular version of Toledot Yeshu, which I have in 2 manuscripts. So I have this introduction in 2 manuscripts. I do not have a single other text. I think this writer, in writing his introduction, tinkered with the beginning of the text as well to make it fit. I don't think the text was existing and then he affixed this introduction. I think he wanted to write a polemical introduction. Interesting at all that he wanted to write an introduction.
But if you're commenting like this on the text, and you're probably not to write your text.
Well, it would be very strange for an Arabic text to begin just out of the blue, Vayehi b'mei tabarinus Caesar horodus, like the way you say. So I think that this was sort of tinkered with as part of adding on the introduction. It's the first time I've ever said that, by the way, but this is, just talking with you guys. I mean, I've studied this introduction a lot. It's not that I haven't, but I think that's why this came about. Yeah, but I'm really glad you lighted onto that midrash.
Do you think there's a time lapse between the attachment of the introduction and the rest of the text?
It's a really interesting question, Jane. I'm not sure. Because I do think that this Arabic text is a product of 8th, 9th centuries. So the question is, and people were writing introductions then, so the question is, was it written with the introduction or not? Yeah, hard to say. Okay, so how about, so that I just wanted to show you that sort of interesting Judeo-Arabic tidbit. Now, I wanted to turn to this late Oriental version of Toledot Yeshu that I gave you. It looks like this. You have that?
By the way, I just noted what you said earlier about Judeo-Arabic being different than Classical Arabic.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of colloquialism in this part.
Yeah, exactly. So this,
Fine. It's like kind of.
yeah, exactly. So this, some of my Toledot Yeshu texts read like an Egyptian taxi driver talking. Like some of them are really, really dialectal. Yonatan has read some of those with me for sure. And some of them are much more classical. So you're exactly right. This is a late text. This one's pretty late. So it's very dialectal. Okay, so the reason I chose this, so this is from the edition that I talked about. So I had, let me just show you guys this to do a little. So this is the book that I was talking about. This was the product of a project that happened at Princeton University. Have you guys seen, are you familiar with this? Anyway, if you're medievalist, you should be familiar with it. There's been sort of a lot of hype about interest in Toledot Yeshu over, let's say, the past 15 years. So Peter Schaefer, who was the head of the Jewish Museum in Berlin until recently, and Michael Mearson had a project in which they created editions and translations of some 100 manuscripts of Toledot Yeshu in Hebrew and Aramaic. And they took up the research that had been done by earlier scholars. For example, Riccardo Di Segni, who is currently the chief rabbi of Italy, wrote a book in 1982 called Il Vangelo del Ghetto, the Gospel of the Ghetto. But he did, Di Segni was really responsible for the first categorization of Toledot Yeshu because it's a manuscript that is a work that circulated so much, it existed in many, many different versions. So Di Segni began with this categorization and they took it from it. So in any case, to cut to the chase, on Mor Zebek's website, you can have access to numerous transcriptions and translations of Toledot Yeshu. The transcriptions are on the website and the translations are written in this book. So I chose for you, now after, not that much has been done so far with the Hebrew versions that they made available. So I'm always encouraging my students and I encourage you to look into these. So I brought you one of the Near Eastern versions of Toledot Yeshu that really hasn't gotten much attention. And I think all of the Near Eastern versions are interesting because of the fact that they were probably coexisting with the Judeo-Arabic. Okay, so how about we read? The one that where I want to read from, Conception of Yeshu. Okay, Jesse, you want to read?
Sure.
You feel comfortable? Right here, on the first page. Do you have the right one? You have the Hebrew. Are you printing out the Hebrew, not the English? Did they not print out the English?
This was in the binder. I think they're just two different packets. Just two different. Yeah,
Sure. Okay. If you have the English. Oh no, they didn't. I gave the Hebrew and the English. I guess they didn't print out the English for you. All right, that's okay. Some people have the English.
Yeah, I have it up on.
Ah,
I
good.
have it.
Okay, so whoever can get it up online and whoever not, maybe just share. Is that okay? And we'll read it out loud. I just want to pull out some of the interesting polemical aspects of this. Okay, sure.
One night, her husband, Rabbi Yochanan, went to the school of Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach. Yosef Pandera came and entered the house of Rabbi Yochanan. He was drunk, and Miriam was sleeping. He seized her and lay with her, while she was thinking that he was her husband. She was saying, "My husband, do not touch me, because since you left home, I am now menstruating." And that villain, his lust took hold of him, and he did not pay attention to her words. He lay with her while she was thinking that he was her husband. He lay with her while she was menstruating, and he went away.
Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. I mean, this is sort of the kernel of what's added in the Hellenic version. Many aspects of Toledot Yeshu have their base, not many of them, but some have their base in Talmudic stories. I mean, the Talmud raises questions about Jesus' conception. It doesn't do it in this kind of detailed way. You know, there are new and sort of creative aspects that are happening here. Okay, so now disclosure. Evan, you want to read? Disclosure, do you have it?
I'll just After that, Rabbi Yochanan came from the school to his home. She said to him, "My lord, why did you do so this night? For you never had this custom. You drank and became drunk, and you came to me while I was impure. I was telling you, you did not pay attention to my words at all. You seized me and you lay with me while I was menstruating, and you went away." When Rabbi Yochanan heard the words of his wife, he understood that it was a cunning trick of Yosef Pandera, and he was furious. He left his wife, went to Rabbi Shimon ben Sheta, and told him all that happened. Rabbi Shimon said to him, "We will not be able to judge him without witnesses, but you should know, who once committed a transgression is likely to commit it again. Station ambushes for him, so that you will catch him with witnesses, and then we will bring him to court." Rabbi Yochanan went away, deeply worried. When he saw that his wife was pregnant, he left her, went to Babylonia, and never returned.
Okay. I'll take it back. So any comments so far on this text?
What vivid imagination.
Lots of imagination, yeah, vivid imagination. What about as a polemic? What do you guys say about this? Could I say it's a polemic? This is the first polemic against Jesus. First polemic against Christianity.
Why make his mother into a positive figure?
You mean that she didn't know? Why do you call her positive here?
Well, she I think is presented as pious here.
Mm-hmm. This particular, you mean pious in the initial, one of the pure and modest daughters? What we did,
Yeah, and then the description of her reaction to Nida and all that kind of thing.
No, she is pious. I mean, no, so the Nida thing, I mean, I would present it differently. Like, anybody want to respond to Jesse on that? So Jesse asked why this emphasis. Miriam is a very careful person, that's great, very positive towards Miriam, no? What do you say, Emily?
This is not my field. This is very frightening. I mean, the way that this gets picked up in medieval Europe is what I imagine that at least part of the intent behind this business might have been, which is that not only is Jesus just sort of conceived in this like literal bloody, like there's nothing pure or virginal about Mary at all, just
Well
in
said.
any way.
Yeah.
I mean, she's and there's like Severance of Vetus has like a whole thing about sort of Jesus is born of a person, and that person defecates and urinates and so
Right.
forth, and there's a whole sort of disgust polemic,
Right.
like a la Alexandra Kuffel that's
Yes,
happening,
yeah.
I think. And you might even be able, I mean, this is such an uncharitable reading, but like you might even be able to read it as like, I mean, she certainly tried to be like, no, please don't do that, I'm menstruating, that's terrible, but she certainly wasn't pious enough to actually keep him off of her,
Uh-huh.
which is horrifying, truly horrifying, but I mean, it just paints everyone involved in such a sort of dirty light, just in the first couple of paragraphs.
She didn't really resist. She pretended to, kind of exemplify.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I'm willing to consider that. I really like your point about. I mean, it's the opposite. It's the complete opposite of any kind of immaculate conception. Like you said, it's like immaculate versus bloody. That's what you're.
Gross. Yeah.
Okay, but keep in mind also, this text is a counter history, so it's created in this atmosphere of all sorts of other facts about Jesus that are being purveyed in many other texts that Jews are familiar with. So what better opportunity to repeat over and over again? I mean, so you hear the story tells it once, and then the wife says to the husband, "Why did you do that to me?" And then in the next section, and then the husband has to go to the rabbi and tell him. I mean, so this story is told and retold many times during the. I mean, it's a very good polemical tactic as well. Okay, this whole retelling. Let's read now Truth Revealed. Maybe I'll read it out loud. Because what you're raising about Miriam, I mean, Miriam is a very interesting figure in general in the Near East. I mean, the Quran has a line, the Jews said something terrible about Miriam. I mean, I have questions about to what extent other cultures maybe were aware that Jews were saying these kinds of things about Miriam. And in different versions of Toledot Yeshu, Miriam comes out as more and less innocent. Okay, like in some of the versions, she knew nothing. She didn't know at all. In other of them, she did realize. There's a real sort of spectrum of approaches to Miriam. In general, she comes out of this text actually pretty well. But the different versions, and really these Hebrew texts are really calling out for people to work on them. These different versions have sort of different presentations of both Miriam and Yeshu, by the way. Yeah.
Was there a gender kind of, because we are in the Middle East, and it's a man's world in the Middle East, so was it because she was just a vial for the birth and conception of Jesus? She was passive anyways in the eyes of, medieval men. So it didn't really matter if she had a role or not. It was the guys who did it, and the guy who escaped responsibility, and the guy who came from her, who, it was all men.
Yeah. No,
So
that's
it's a
very
man's
interesting.
story told from a man's perspective, where the woman is assigned a passive role at best, or a gullible
Right.
participant who,
Right.
oh, I didn't know, like the bumbling.
No, that's a good point. I mean, so you're saying in addition to this polemical
There's
aspect
this
where she's important,
patriarchal
there's this cultural
cultural role assigned to
No,
women.
no, that's a very important point. Yeah, to look not just as the theology and religion aspects, but also the
cultural.
Yeah, there's recent research going on right now about female figures in Toledot Yeshu. So I think Sarit Katan Grubetz is writing about that, and Galit Chazan Rokem of my university, my retired colleague from the Hebrew Literature Department, has also written on the female figures in Toledot Yeshu. So sort of trying to bring them out, but it may be that at base the composition is as you say. Yeah.
So we have a few minutes left.
Okay, Steve.
Sorry.
That's okay. Let's see what else I want to. Okay. I'll just sort of interest you with one final bit on page 225, the one called Envoys. Just for those of you who deal with late antique and early Islamic period, just something for you to take away. There are some of those in this room, aren't there? Abraham, I think, and okay, good. Okay, so Envoys. So I'm reading from page 225. What did the queen do? So there's this it's an action story. It's a funny story. Christians do get offended. I've had Christian students who were offended by this text, especially the portrayal of Miriam. But in any case, there's action in this text. So what did the queen do? She sent horsemen after him so that they should bring him to her. The horsemen went and found him inciting the people. When the villains who were with him saw this, they asked the horsemen who came for him. They said, "Why did you come?" They said, "We are looking for Yeshu." They arose to start a quarrel with them, but Yeshu said, "By the life of my Father in heaven, do not start any quarrel with them, because he shall save me from their hands." Okay, now listen to this. The people of the Galilee brought dead birds, and he pronounced the ineffable name over them, Hashem HaMefarash, and they flew up into the sky. Then they came and prostrated themselves before Yeshu, God forbid. Okay, so what is any associations here? What does this remind you of?
Birds.
Yeah,
Mitzvah.
Mitzorah?
Yeah.
You mean the sacrifice of the Mitzorah? Okay. Emily?
There's the sort of riverbank scene in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas.
Okay, great.
Which is, that involves, I don't recall exactly how they come to life, but I think they're clay and not dead.
Very good.
They're,
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so great. Why do you say this is not your field? What is this? It's all your
I
field.
accidentally went to Fordham before I became a medievalist. I don't know.
Wow. Okay, so this is exactly, I just leave you with this one interesting point just to show you how the Arabic text during the period that I work on sort of intertwine and come together. Okay, so here the people of Galilee brought dead birds. What is a greater miracle than bringing something dead to life, right? No. So what Jesus does, so this is based, this particular version, it's a Baghdadi manuscript from the 18th or 19th century. These Hebrew Near Eastern versions are really not very well understood yet. But the original miracle with which, probably the original author of Toledot Yeshu was familiar was bringing clay birds to life. As Emily points out in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, a very famous event, which made it into the Quran, by the way. It's one of the things that Jesus is known for in the Quran. This late antique milieu was clearly a story that was well known. This manuscript, somehow somebody who copied this obviously wasn't familiar with the earlier text, and it doesn't make sense. What, clay birds to life? It's much more amazing to bring dead birds to life. So in any case, it's just a very interesting feature of this particular manuscript. So I hope I've introduced you to some sort of important and big general topics that I think really are important for students of Jewish history, Judeo-Arabic, Jews, what Jews wrote in Arabic and why it's important, and hopefully also to why Judeo-Arabic Toledot Yeshu is a very important text for medieval studies.